Prince Louis Rwagasore, a Burundian prince and politician, who was the second Prime Minister of Burundi for 2 weeks, from September 28, 1961 until his assassination on October 13. Born to the Ghana family of Burundian Mwami, King Mwambutsa IV in Belgian-administered Rwanda Urundi in 1932, Rwagasore was educated in Burundian Catholic schools before attending university in Belgium. After he returned to Burundi in the mid-1950s, he founded a series of cooperatives to economically empower native Burundians and build up his base of political support. The Belgian administration took over the venture, and as a result of the affair his national profile increased and he became a leading figure of the anti-colonial movement. He soon thereafter became involved with a nationalist political party, the Union for National Progress, UPRNA. He pushed for Burundian independence from Belgian control, national unity, and the institution of a constitutional monarchy. Rwagasore sought to bring UPRNA mass appeal across different regions, ethnicities, and castes, and under him the party maintained a leadership balanced between ethnic Hutus and Tutsis, though the latter were usually favored for more important positions. The Belgian administration disliked UPRNA and initially attempted to stifle Rwagasore's activities, placing him under house arrest in 1960 during municipal elections. International pressure led the administration to back down, and the following year UPRNA won an overwhelming majority in the legislative elections. As a result, Rwagasore became Prime Minister of Burundi on September 28, 1961. 2 weeks later, he was gunned down by a Greek national at the direction of leaders of a rival political party with the probable support of the Belgian resident in Burundi. Rwagasore's death derailed his attempts to build national ethnic cohesion and facilitated the growth of Hutu, Tutsi tensions in the country. It also fractured UPRNA, as his former lieutenants engaged in a power struggle to succeed him as the party's leader. Within Burundi, Rwagasore enjoys nearly universal acclaim, and his assassination is commemorated annually with large ceremonies. He remains relatively unknown internationally in comparison to other leaders of independence movements in the African Great Lakes region. Prince Louis Rwagasore was born on January 10, 1932 in Gitega, Rwanda Urundi, to Mwami, King Mwambutsa IV and Therese Kanyonga. Ethnically, he was a member of the Bazi clan of the Ghana, a group of people of aristocratic status often associated with the Tutsis. The frequency of matrimonial alliances among the Ghana gave Rwagasore familial links to numerous chiefs in Urundi. Mwambutsa and Kanyonga, after giving birth to Louis, birthed 2 daughters, Rosa Paula Iribagiza and Rugine Kanyonga, before divorcing in 1940. Mwambutsa remarried in 1946 and fathered a second son, Charles Ndizeye. Rwagasore began attending school at the age of 7, going to Catholic institutions in Bukai, Kanyanya, and Gitega. In 1945 Rwagasore enrolled in the Groupe Scolaire d'Estrada. He studied there for 6 years, and in 1951, he went to Antwerp to study at the University Institute of Overseas Territories, Institut Universitaire de Territoires d'Outre-mer. He was a poor student, but after 1 year at the institute he enrolled at the Catholic University of Leuven, where after 3 years of study he earned a degree in political economy. Rwagasore returned to Urundi in December 1956. In April 1957 he was hired by the Belgian administration to oversee studies of economic, agricultural, and administrative concerns. On September 12, 1959 he married a Hutu woman, Marie-Rose Ntamikivio, in Bujumbura. They had 2 daughters, both of whom died in infancy. Political career. In June 1957 Rwagasore founded a series of cooperatives, known as the Traders Cooperatives of Burundi, Coopératives de Commerçants du Burundi, CCB, with the goal of empowering native Urundians to control their own commerce and thus building his personal support among Swahili traders of Bujumbura. In its first public meeting, the CCB drew a crowd of 200 merchants, and it secured several favorable contracts with exporters. It facilitated the creation of links between rural farmers and urban traders, and, at the same time, Burundians began protesting fees and taxes levied by the Belgians. The colonial administration was irritated by the CCB, but reasoned that it could not take direct action against Rwagasore, with Governor of Rwanda Burundi Jean-Paul Haroui writing to the Minister of Colonies that detaining or deporting the eldest son of the Mwami would be poorly received by peasants and lead to civil disorder. Despite its early successes, the CCB ran into financial trouble, in part due to mismanagement. Rwagasore attributed the cooperative's problems to Belgian sabotage, while the colonial administration accused Rwagasore of embezzling its money to fund a lavish lifestyle. To what extent either of these factors was true and how heavily they affected the project remains unclear. Rwagasore spent 3 months at the Expo 58 in Brussels seeking new investors and asked for help from President Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, but these appeals were unsuccessful. He then requested credit for the cooperatives from the Supreme Land Council, Conseil Supérieur du Pays, an advisory body presided over by the Mwami that had some competence over budgetary and administrative affairs in Burundi. Though the Belgian administration informed the council that it disapproved of the cooperative, Rwagasore convinced the body to support him. The Belgian administration formally vetoed the loan in June and intervened to take over the CCB. In the ensuing struggle, Rwagasore's national profile dramatically increased and he became a leading figure of the anti-colonial activists. The CCB was ultimately merged with an administration cooperative. As a result of the affair, he forged connections with Tanganyikan nationalist Julius Nyerere, who provided him with advice and financial assistance. Sometime thereafter, Rwagasore became involved with a nascent political party, the Union for National Progress, Union pour le Progrès National, UPRNA, though sources differ on the circumstances of UPRNA's founding and Rwagasore's role in its early days. He took virtual control over the movement, though his familial connection to the Mwami disqualified him from holding any party offices and he officially served UPRNA only as an advisor. UPRNA was able to secure the early financial support of the Swahili population in Bujumbura and Lake Tanganyika coastline. The party initially was strongly identified with the interests of the Bazi lineage of Ghana and support for traditional institutions, but this alignment fell apart after Rwagasore came into conflict with his father. Mwambutsa had been quietly supportive of his son's attempts to build a political career in the late 1950s, but encouraged other Ghana to compete with Rwagasore to ensure his own authority remained unchallenged. Mwambutsa cared little for UPRNA and his son was not among his close confidants. At the center of their political differences was Rwagasore's anti-colonial rhetoric, which frustrated Mwambutsa, as he felt it strained the monarchy's relationship with the Belgians. In an attempt to distract Rwagasore from politics, the Belgian administration designated him head of the Butanyurira chiefdom, an area in Ngozi province, in February 1959. He resigned from the post to focus on his political career. Under Rwagasore, UPRNA pushed a program of modernization, committing neither to a return to the feudal system nor a complete societal transformation. He used symbols of the monarchy to communicate his message and often emphasized his princely status at public appearances, but he stressed that UPRNA would support the monarchy only insofar as this regime and its dynasty favored the genuine emancipation of the Murundi people. He believed that only a constitutional monarchy could maintain legitimacy and that the Mwami should cede most authority to a civilian government. While conscious of socio-economic problems, he primarily focused on issues relating to Burundian independence, popular legitimacy of the monarchy, and national unity. He advocated a foreign policy of non-alignment in the ongoing Cold War. Rwagasore sought to transform UPRNA into a mass party with broad-base appeal across different regions, ethnicities, and castes. Wary of the growing Hutu-Tutsi conflict in Rwanda, he sought to counteract tensions by bringing members of both groups into UPRNA's leadership. Formal party positions at both the national and local levels were usually evenly divided between Hutus and Tutsis, though the latter tended to occupy the most important offices. The party enjoyed some cohesive success in Bujumbura, but never truly cultivated a mass political base, especially outside the capital. UPRNA's internal rules set devolved responsibilities to the Central Committee, but in practice the party operated at the whim of Rwagasore. It retained relatively weak organizational capability and was held together by his charismatic leadership. His populist tendencies and personal popularity led many of the original chiefs who had supported UPRNA, including founding member Leopold Biha, to leave the party and engage in their own political activities. Rumors that the Mwami would pass the throne on to his younger son, Charles, facilitated criticisms by UPRNA's rivals that the party was simply a mechanism for Rwagasore to achieve power. In response, he issued a tract which said, "If I do not become Mwami, will that prevent me from fighting for you, from being a great leader for you?" Rwagasore favored immediate independence from Belgian control. To protest colonial rule, he encouraged boycotts of European goods and refusal to pay taxes. The Belgian administration was wary of Rwagasore's nationalism, which it perceived as extremist, and supported the creation of a rival party, the Christian Democratic Party, Parti Démocratique Chrétien, PDC, a grouping seen as more moderate and which rejected immediate independence. Despite ideological differences, the rivalries between the two parties were primarily fueled by the intra-nobility conflicts, as the Bazi and Ter lineages backed UPRNA and PDC respectively. The two lineages had long struggled for control of the country. In 1959 Ter leader Chief Pierre Baranianka questioned whether Mwambutsa's marriage to Kanyanga was legitimate according to custom in an attempt to challenge Rwagasore's place in the line to the throne. Even though UPRNA had distanced themselves from the Bazi, Rwagasore was still perceived as leader of the Bazi nobility by the time of the elections. As the PDC and UPRNA campaigned in early 1960, the antipathy between Rwagasore and Baranianka grew. The former feared an assassination plot sponsored by the chief and began carrying a gun, while the latter wrote letters to the Mwami to condemn him for failing to control his son. Rwagasore participated in the independence celebrations of the Republic of the Congo in June 1960. As civil order broke down and the Congo fell into crisis, he released a joint communiqué with rival politician Joseph Biroli on July 15, appealing for calm and racial harmony, saying Burundi had the unique chance to create in the heart of Africa an island of peace, tranquility, and prosperity. In anticipation of Burundi's first municipal elections in November 1960, he issued circulars which called for people to shake off foreign domination and slavery. Shortly before the contests were held, the administration placed Rwagasore under house arrest on October 27 with the pretext that he was violating a previous agreement by Burundian political parties stipulating that persons within 2 degrees of familial relationship to the Mwami be barred from political activity. It further accused him of possessing seditious pamphlets. In reality, the administration hoped the arrest would weaken UPRNA and generate a more preferable outcome in the elections. At the administration's encouragement, the PDC also joined with several other parties to create an anti-UPRNA cartel known as the Common Front, Front Commun, FC. Angered by the arrest of their leader, UPRNA declared a boycott of the elections. The PDC won a plurality of the offices in the contest, and in early 1961 the administration established a transitional government under Joseph Simpay with some PDC ministers but none from UPRNA. Rwagasore was released after the elections on December 9, 1960. Subsequent international scrutiny, particularly from the United Nations, UN, led the Belgians to withdraw themselves from national politics. The UN created a commission for Rwanda-Urundi which liberalized the political sphere and restored Rwagasore's political rights. Thereafter he was allowed to engage in politics unhindered by the Belgian administration. In 1961, the Belgian administration officially renamed Rwanda-Urundi as Rwanda-Burundi. For the 1961 legislative elections, UPRNA concentrated its entire election campaign on Rwagasore, using his charisma to rally substantial support. Rwagasore traveled across the country to introduce his party's candidates. Over the course of the elections, he was able to assemble a broad political coalition. Even though most of it was pro-monarchical, he also voiced support for the leftist ideas of Patrice Lumumba from the neighboring Congo. This earned him the support of a small group of radical anti-monarchist Tutsi intellectuals. In the end, Rwagasore's coalition included representatives of the Tutsi oligarchy, conservative Hutu evolus, radical youth groups, urban factions, and large sections of the rural population. In general, UPRNA presented itself as strongly pro-monarchy, with the slogan God, Fatherland, Mwami being prominently used. The PDC had assumed victory was certain due to its success during the November 1960 municipal elections. It began its election campaign far too late, and also used the alternate slogan God and Fatherland, which seemed to many Burundians to be deliberately critical of the monarchy, costing it substantial grassroots backing. Burundi held legislative elections on September 18, 1961. With approximately 80% voter turnout, UPRNA won 58 of 64 seats in the Legislative Assembly and Rwagasore was declared formateur. 2 days later he delivered a speech over national radio aimed at reconciliation, saying that UPRNA's electoral victory is not the one of the party. It is the triumph of order, that of discipline, of peace, of public tranquility. The electoral campaign is over, the past must be forgotten. Belgian officials were generally unhappy with Rwagasore's victory, though they conceded some appreciation for his address. Angered by their loss, PDC members in Mukanki, Kirundo province rioted and attacked UPRNA members. Rwagasore appealed to the latter not to be provoked, and the colonial authorities quickly restored order. On September 28 the Legislative Assembly convened to decide on a new government. In a secret ballot, 51 deputies indicated their desire for Rwagasore to lead the new government. He assembled a 10-member government of national unity which secured the confidence of all but one of the deputies in the Legislative Assembly and was sworn in. Pierre Njandanjamwi became vice prime minister, while Rwagasore's brother-in-law, André Muhirwe, was made Minister of Interior. Rwagasore's government did not offer a program to the Assembly. In his inaugural address, he promised that his government would look into the real problems of the nation, especially the economic problems, the problems of the land and of the social emancipation of the population, the problems of education and so many others, to which we will find our own solutions. His government was generally welcomed by Burundians, although some Hutu UPRNA members felt they were underrepresented. The government did not have any control over matters of defense, foreign affairs, or technical assistance, these competencies being reserved to the Belgian resident, though Rwagasore proclaimed his wish to reduce the role of the colonial administration in Burundi to one of consultative aid. His government pledged to incorporate opposition party members into the administration and supported a political union with Rwanda and Tanganyika, though he later suggested that he wanted an economic union with Tanganyika but no association with the ethnically polarist Rwanda. He also promised to address Hutu interests. However, UPRNA's victory caused considerable unrest among the nobility, with the Tair lineage perceiving Rwagasore's success as a takeover by the Bazi. Existing hostilities between the nobility escalated as a result of the elections. As a measure of reconciliation, Rwagasore appointed a Tair as director of tourism. The Belgian resident in Burundi, Roberto Renier, later claimed that Rwagasore planned to make several FC figures ambassadors or grant them other positions, though in an interview with the press in October the Prime Minister remained vague about the place of an opposition in the new regime. Death. On October 13, 1961, Rwagasore was shot in the throat, fired from approximately 60 feet, 18 meters, away from a group of bushes while dining outdoors with friends and his cabinet members at the Hotel Tanganyika in Bujumbura. He was pronounced dead at the scene. In the ensuing confusion, Rwagasore's assassin jumped into a waiting car and escaped. After being inspected by a doctor, Rwagasore's corpse was taken to Rodane Hospital. A witness described the getaway car to the authorities and an investigator was able to connect the vehicle to a group of people he had seen in the capital earlier that day. Within 3 days the police had arrested a Greek national, Yanis Kajurgis, who had fired the shot, and 3 Burundian accomplices, Antoine Nahimana, Henry Ntakiyika, and Jean-Baptiste Ntakiyika. The latter 3 were all members of the PDC. The group quickly admitted responsibility for the murder and incriminated 3 other persons in their plot, Michel Iatro, Jean-Baptiste Ntedendorija, and Joseph Biroli. The former was a Greek national who had given money to the PDC and was a business associate of Kajurgis. The latter two were high-ranking members of the PDC, with Ntedendorija having previously served as a minister in government. As sons of Chief Pierre Baronianka, they were also distant cousins of Rwagasore. Rwagasore was buried on October 18, 1961 at the plot of Vugizo in Bujumbura. Burundi was granted independence in 1962, and in his official speech marking the event, Prime Minister Muhirwe paid extensive tribute to Rwagasore and credited him for pushing the country towards sovereignty. From 1962 to 1963 a monument was constructed at Rwagasore's burial site, featuring a mausoleum and 3 arches with a black cross. Prince Louis Rwagasore Stadium was also constructed to honor him. The government funded these projects by releasing a series of postage stamps bearing his image in February 1963. That year the government declared October 13 a public holiday and renamed a hospital and avenue in Bujumbura in commemoration. His image was also used to adorn public buildings, while the first printings of the Burundian franc included banknotes with his visage. 2 more postage series featuring Rwagasore were later released, one in 1966 pairing his image with that of assassinated United States President John F. Kennedy, and another in 1972 celebrating the 10th anniversary of Burundian independence. Numerous schools and roads in Burundi have since been named for him, as was the sole aircraft of the country's first state airline, and the Legislative Assembly created the Order of Prince Louis as a national order of merit. In 1966 Captain Michel Mikomro launched a military coup, overthrowing the monarchy and transforming Burundi into a republic with himself as its president. UPRNA subsequently became the only legal political party. Mikomro referred to himself as the successor and sometimes little brother of Rwagasore. Throughout his tenure the late Prime Minister was frequently honored in public ceremonies, and his portrait remained prevalent in public places. In 1976, Mikomro was overthrown and replaced by Colonel Jean-Baptiste Bagaza. Bagaza tried to present himself as a modernizer, and Rwagasore's reputation thus competed with him. As a result, he de-emphasized mention of Rwagasore and suspended celebration of the October 13 holiday. In 1987 Bagaza was overthrown by Major Pierre Buyoya. Following ethnic violence in 1988, Buyoya declared a policy of national unity, and used Rwagasore as a symbol of this. Under Buyoya's tenure, more portraits of Rwagasore were hung in public places, the mausoleum was renovated and a UPRNA-sponsored Rwagasore Institute was created to promote national reconciliation. In the 1990s, Burundi underwent a democratic transition which included the re-establishment of multi-party politics. The end of UPRNA's monopoly on power led to a decline in public celebration of Rwagasore. One of the key nascent opposition parties, Front for Democracy in Burundi, Front pour la Démocratie au Burundi, FRODEBU, made reference to Rwagasore in its official publication but avoided all associations of him with UPRNA. FRODEBU won the parliamentary and presidential elections in 1993. The new president, Melchior Ndadaye, did not attend any official commemorations for Rwagasore in October. Ndadaye was assassinated in a coup attempt later that month, plunging Burundi into a crisis which evolved into a civil war. During this time Rwagasore was usually invoked only by politicians in self-serving fashion or by newspapers calling for reconciliation. In the late 1990s, the belligerents in the civil war partook in peace talks. The resulting Arusha Accords praised the charismatic leadership of Prince Louis Rwagasore and his companions who had kept Burundi from plunging into a political confrontation based on ethnic considerations. The implementation of the accords and further negotiation eventually resulted in the election of Pierre Nkurunziza as president in 2005. During his tenure, he attended annual celebrations of Rwagasore in October and frequently mentioned him in his speeches. His government also repaired several monuments to the late premier and erected a new one jointly honoring him and Ndadaye at a roundabout in Bujumbura. In 2019 he renamed Rwagasore Stadium, but stated that the planned parliament building to be built in Gitega would bear Rwagasore's name. Popular reputation. After his death, historian Aidan Russell wrote that Rwagasore's reputation was quickly transformed into that of a hero and martyr, and that he was the subject of a competitive hagiography. Within Burundi, his reputation enjoys nearly universal acclaim, with his speeches often quoted in political discussions and his surviving political opponents and their descendants offering praise of him. His assassination is commemorated annually with large ceremonies. Historian Christine Deslaurier wrote that it is the martyrological dimensions of his anti-colonialism that have established a consensus around his mythical figure, more than his political and social thought. DeWitt wrote that Rwagasore has functioned as a two-dimensional icon. Rwagasore's widespread popularity in Burundi stands in contrast to the divided feelings toward most other domestic historical figures. He remains relatively unknown internationally, with his career overshadowed by those of Nyerere and Lumumba and his assassination eclipsed by the Congo crisis and the contemporary ethnic violence in Rwanda. Thank you for watching this video.